This really happened to me in Seattle, and saying it out loud still makes my throat tighten. I'm 68 now, and I'm telling it exactly the way I lived it, because I need you to know what it feels like when your own child decides you're a problem to be solved by force. We were at my kitchen table in Ballard, the old Scandinavian one with burn marks from when my husband Lee thought a cast iron pan could double as a centerpiece. A pile of envelopes sat next to the fruit bowl, my phone face down, and my blue BQ debit card was between my son's fingers. Evan didn't hand it back. He rubbed the embossed numbers with his thumb like a magician about to make it vanish. "We reset your PIN," he said, pronouncing it like a diagnosis. Ashley, his wife, stood behind him, arms crossed, pacing small triangles between the refrigerator and the window. They had come, they said, to clean up my digital life because, Mom, you keep forgetting passwords. My neighbor Helen was supposed to come by for coffee after her shift at Swedish Ballard, and I'd baked lemon bars, but instead I was watching my son's jaw tense while he explained why my money needed guarding. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel, tell us where you're from, and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. I remember the afternoon light. It came in sideways past the maple tree, past the feeder where a frustrated squirrel kept headbutting the metal cone Lee put up years ago. Evan's voice was soft around the edges. He always does that when he wants something. "You've been off," he said gently. "We noticed, missed my texts, confused about the Apple ID. We figured, let's just streamline things." He held up my card like it was a fragile seashell. "We changed the PIN to something easy. 4721, your birthday. We'll write it down and keep it safe." Ashley nodded, scrolling on her phone. "And we added your email to my LastPass," she said. "That way, if anything happens, I can help. Also, I moved a couple of your bill payments to auto-pay. Don't worry, it's all fine." People like to say that betrayal is loud. Mine arrived in soft voices and a spreadsheet. They were there because I'd asked Evan to help me transfer photos from my old iPhone 8 to the new one my daughter Marissa insisted I buy at the Apple Store in University Village. That was the reason we gathered. Photo transfer, coffee, a lemon bar. Then I'd send them back across the bridge to Bellevue before the 520 got jammed. The task had a physical shape to it. Cables, a phone, the kitchen table. You can trust a task you can see. But as Evan spoke, the task I'd invited them for started shedding its skin. It wasn't about photos, not really. It was about control, hiding inside, help. "Why didn't you ask me first?" I said. Evan smiled, but his eyes didn't. "We tried calling this morning, Mom. You didn't pick up." He had called 3 times. I was at the Ballard post office buying a roll of winter stamps and chatting with a clerk about her mother's hip replacement. I'm not careless. I'm just not immediately available. There's a difference. Ashley put my phone in her palm and flicked through the settings faster than I could track. "We're also turning on screen time," she announced. "Limits, so you don't get scammed by those Facebook ads. And we're pruning your contacts. You have 3 Helens and 2 Jims." "One is dead," I said. "Exactly," she said, and rolled her eyes to the side where Evan could see. I felt the start of heat behind my eyes, the pre-tears, as I call them. I looked at the magnet with Lee's fishing license stuck to the fridge and thought, you would have kicked them out. You would have told Evan that as long as I can butter bread, I can remember numbers. But Lee's been gone 4 years, a quiet heart attack in our driveway that left me walking out into the morning with 2 coffees and meeting a body on the gravel. I am the one who stayed. Staying is a different muscle than fighting. "Okay," I said. "Well, thank you for looking out. Could I have my card, please?" Evan didn't move. Ashley's eyes flickered up from the phone. "We'll give it to you after we do the password manager," she said. "Also, I noticed you had a couple of weird ATM withdrawals last week. At the U.S. Bank on Market Street? Was that you? 200, then 900? "I took out cash for the roofer," I said. He gives a discount for cash. Sketchy, Ashley said, and kept scrolling. There was a cough at the back door. Helen. She saw me and halted, reading the air like nurses do. Bad time? She said. No, I said. Good time. Lemon bars are cooling. I said it too brightly, like a woman in a sitcom trying to hide the smoking toaster. She stepped in, and I watched her take in the tableau. Evan with my card, Ashley at my phone, the open laptop on the table with my bank site on the login screen. Helen set down a tote bag with her name badge still clipped to it, Swedish Health Services. She squeezed my shoulder. That tiny pressure felt like a seatbelt clicking in. We'll be done in 5, Evan said, businesslike. Just making sure Mom's safe. Safe. A lovely word turned into a cage when used by the wrong mouth. If you want to know when you cross from helpful to dangerous, watch someone insist you're fragile while standing between you and the door. They left 40 minutes later with promises. They'd call my internet provider to negotiate. They'd move my water bill to auto pay. They'd drop off a white binder next week with all my life administration in it. Evan hugged me tight. He smelled like cedar and laundry, detergent that cost too much. When the front door closed, the house made that sighing sound timber houses make, an exhale that might be wind or relief, depending on your story. I washed the lemon bar pan even though it didn't need it. The water ran hot. Steam fogged the little triangle window over the sink. That's when I saw it, my phone lighting up on the counter, a notification banner from BQ. New device sign in. A second later, security preferences updated. Then, Zelle transfer scheduled. I dried my hands on a dish towel, the one with stitched blue salmon, and picked up the phone. Face ID. The new one is bossy. It stares at you like a border agent. The banking app opened and, bless BQ, asked for the new PIN they'd helpfully set. My thumb paused over the glass. 4721. I input it, felt sick doing it, as if I was stepping into the small room of someone else's house. The account summary looked familiar until it didn't. A Zelle transfer for $980, pending, to a contact named AP, I tapped. Ashley's initials, Ashley Parker, with a 206 number I knew was hers. Memo. Household supplies. Another one in the history from last week, $580 to EP Evan, with a winking emoji in the memo. I scrolled and my hands went numb in that weird way where your whole body forgets to be warm. There were ATM withdrawals I didn't recognize because they were back-to-back at times. I was definitely at Tai Chi in Green Lake. There was a new email listed as a login for account recovery, their joint Gmail. Okay, I said to the empty kitchen, because sometimes your own voice is the only familiar thing you have left. Okay. People talk about elder fraud like it's a shadowy person on the phone with an accent. They don't talk enough about how it sometimes has your son's laugh. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed and counted the ways I might have invited this into my life. The way I let mail pile up, the way I never learned to like Venmo, the way I say, I'm fine when I'm not. Ballard goes quiet after 10, especially in winter. The ferries sound like someone is dragging a heavy table across Puget Sound. When I finally went downstairs at 2 a.m., I didn't turn on any lights. I opened the hall closet and pulled out the metal biscuit tin Lee's mother used to keep recipe cards in. It rattled. Inside, under an elastic band, were 4 checkbooks from 4 different chapters of our life. U.S. Bank, where we opened our first account when we moved from Wenatchee. A credit union for Boeing workers, from when Lee had a maintenance contract at Payne Field. BQ, current and compromised, and one that made my breath catch, Salal Credit Union, back when it was Group Health Credit Union, and I worked nights in Capitol Hill. I had left $2,400 in that account for car repair emergencies, and then forgotten it, the way you forget one good scarf at the back of the coat rack. I held the Salal checkbook like a relic. It had my maiden name on it. No one else knew it existed. I made coffee at 4 and called the number on the back of the old checkbook at 8. A man named Derek in Spokane listened to me and then said, We can reactivate the account if you come in with ID. There's a branch on 15th in Capitol Hill. We open at 9. I put on my blue raincoat, the one that makes me look like a blueberry, and took the 44 to the Link light rail. Capitol Hill is different now than when I used to walk home from night shift through the sound of bars closing. It's shinier, taller, but it still has the bakery where the owner used to slip me a free croissant because I looked like I needed saving. At Salal, the teller didn't blink at my old checkbook. He clicked, typed, and smiled. "You've got some dust on this one, Rand," he said, "but the money is there." "Can I get a cashier's check?" I asked. "For the full balance?" "Of course. Any reason?" "Yes," I said. "Self-respect." With that piece of paper in my purse, I felt like I had a coat of armor tailored to fit an old woman's shoulders. I walked to the Starbucks on Pine. Don't lecture me. I like their oatmeal. And wrote 3 lists in my notebook. People I trusted. People I needed to call. Things I didn't know yet but needed to. On the 3rd list, first line, I wrote, "What exactly did they change?" I found out at the Beckwith branch in Ballard that afternoon. I asked to speak to a manager. Her name was Bailey, and she looked 25, but had the gravity of a person who's had to tell too many people bad news. In a small glass office, she pulled up my profile. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Klein," she said. "There were access changes. A recovery email was added. Do you recognize this?" She turned her screen slightly so I could read it. I recognized it down to the punctuation. "It's my son's," I said, "and his wife's." Bailey nodded, lips tight. "We'll remove it. We'll reset everything. We can flag your account for no third-party changes without in-person verification, and the pending Zelle can be canceled." She clicked, typed, then paused. "I have to ask," she said, "do you feel safe at home?" I thought about Helen's hand on my shoulder. I thought about Evan's hand on my card. "Yes," I said, "I feel clear." Bailey slid a piece of paper across to me. "This is the number for Adult Protective Services," she said. "I'm not saying you need it. I'm saying you might want to have it. Financial exploitation is tricky, especially when it's family." "I'm not fragile," I said, and then realized I was arguing with the only person in the last 24 hours who had treated me like an adult. "I didn't say you were," she said. "I said it's tricky." I went home and did something Evan would have called dramatic in that tone. That makes you want to break plates. I opened a brand new P.O. box at the Ballard station and filed a change of address for my bank statements only. I put a small wedge-shaped door alarm on the inside of my back door. I asked Helen if she would keep a spare key and the phrase Plan B without asking what Plan A was. "You sure?" she said. "This is going to get worse before it gets better." "That's usually how infections work," I said, and when she laughed, we both sounded like nurses from 1986 again, tired, rude, invincible. That night, I got a text from Evan. "Mom, did your bank app log me out?" We were in the middle of fixing something. I didn't answer. He called. I let it ring and leave a voicemail. I listened to it twice. "Hey, we noticed a hiccup with your account," he said, putting a sincerity coat on his voice like fresh paint. "No biggie. Just call me back. We'll get you squared away." In the background, I heard Ashley say, "Tell her it's fraud alert. That always works." He didn't mute fast enough. Then he added, "Love you." When your baby learns to lie in full sentences, a part of your history goes deaf. The next morning, there was a white envelope in my mailbox, typed "No return address." Inside was a single sheet, a letter from a law office in Kirkland I'd never heard of, notifying me that a petition had been filed in King County Superior Court for limited guardianship of the person and estate of Margaret Klein, submitted by Evan Parker, my son, and Ashley Parker, his spouse, as interested parties. The hearing was set for a Wednesday in 3 weeks at the courthouse on 3rd Avenue. A note at the bottom, "Temporary orders may be sought if the respondent is found to be at risk." I read it 3 times, then I let myself say one word in the kitchen, out loud, where the lemon bars had betrayed me. War. I folded the letter back into the envelope and slid it into the biscuit tin, next to the checkbooks. I made tea. I sat down. I dialed the first person on my people I need to call list. Voicemail. I tried the second. Answer on the second ring. Lisa Patel, a voice said. Soundview Legal, Pioneer Square. Ms. Patel, I said, and my voice didn't shake. My name is Margaret Klein. I have a son who thinks my life is a power strip he can organize. I'd like to hire you today. Tell me everything, she said. I told her the truth, from the lemon bars to the letter, and when I finished, Lisa was quiet for a beat. Then, okay, we're going to slow this down and build the scaffolding under you. First, we'll file a response and a motion to dismiss. Second, I want you to run, not walk, to your primary care and get a cognitive assessment, not because I doubt you, but because judges like paper. Third, do you have funds separate from the accounts your son touched? Yes, I said. He doesn't know they exist. Good, she said, and I knew then why lawyers are expensive. They sell you back the breath you've been holding. We met that afternoon in an office that overlooked Occidental Park. She wore flats and talked like she'd lived in courtrooms long enough to be unimpressed by men who called themselves good guys. She laid out the plan while I wrote with my good pen, a declaration from Helen, bank records from Beck U showing third-party changes, copies of the Zelle transfers to AP and EP with their cutesy emojis, a notarized statement from me that I had not authorized any guardianship petition, a request to sanction anyone who filed it without telling me. She also suggested we file a temporary vulnerable adult protection order, not because I was vulnerable in the way Evan pretended, but because my finances had been touched without consent. The statute cares about facts, not family, she said. We'll let the facts breathe. I paid her retainer with the cashier's check from Salal. She didn't blink at the old credit union's name. She put the receipt in a manila folder like she was tucking me into a safe. On my way home, I stopped by the Beck-U branch again and asked Bailey to print the logs showing device changes. She did. She gave me a grim smile. You holding up? She said. I nodded. Good, she said. Sometimes it's the folks who say they're holding up who actually are. That night I texted Marissa in Portland. I hadn't told her everything yet. She and Evan don't speak, and I didn't want her to fly up breathing fire. I love you, I wrote. Don't worry, I'm okay. Might need you in a few weeks. She called immediately, of course, because she is not her brother's wife. What's going on? She said. Your brother, I said. He tried to reset me. I'm rebooting myself. Want me to drive up tonight? Not tonight, I said. Soon, save your rage. I'll tell you where to aim. When we hung up, I stood in the doorway to the dining room and remembered Evan at 7, cheeks red from soccer practice, gnawing on an ear of corn like a typewriter. I remembered him at 12, in a scout uniform, saluting Lee like a joke. I remembered him at 20, borrowing my old Civic to take Ashley to a movie at the Cinerama. When does love turn from a quilt into a sheet of paper you can tear? I don't know. I only know I went to sleep with the envelope from the law office under my pillow, like a child guarding a tooth. In the morning, I woke to my doorbell ringing in an impatient rhythm. Through the peephole, Evan, alone, hands jammed in his jacket, eyes bright. He knew I was standing there. He'd always been able to hear me breathe when I was scared. Mom, he said through the door, voice theatrical with concern. We need to talk. There's a situation with your account, and we need to fix it before there's consequences. I turned the deadbolt. I loosened the chain. I held the metal biscuit tin under my arm like a purse. Okay, I said, opening the door just far enough to let his face in, but not his hands. Let's fix it, but not here. Where then? He said, confused. He hated being off script. Downtown, I said. King County Superior Court. Downtown, I said. King County Superior Court. He blinked. Now? Now, I said, and shut the door enough to make him take a step back. I watched him make the calculations he always makes, the traffic, the time, the edge he thinks he has. I grabbed my keys, my file folder, and tucked the metal biscuit tin under my arm. We walked to my car in a silence that made the winter air feel sharper. He climbed into the passenger seat like we were going on an errand, like this was a Target run. I drove, and in the reflection on the windshield I could see him reading my face, the way he used to read game manuals, looking for cheat codes. The courthouse at 516 3rd Avenue has a smell I recognize from every official building I've ever worked in. Old paper, coffee maker burnt on the bottom, a hint of sadness. We stepped through the metal detector, shoes off, purse in a gray tray, and the security guard gave me the nod he gives to women my age who know how to move through these rituals without fuss. Evan's phone beeped 3 times in the tray like it was tattling. He gave the guard a smile. I watched him practice in the mirror when he was 13. In the elevator up to the family law floor, he cleared his throat. "Mom, I just want you to know none of this is hostile. We just need to make sure everything stays stable. This court thing, it's a formality." "A formality that gives you my keys," I said. "Interesting form." He shoved his hands in his jacket pockets. "You don't have to be snide." "No," I said, and the elevator doors opened on a hall that smelled like bleach and urgency. "I have to be clear." Lisa was waiting outside the courtroom, flats, hair pulled back, a stack of files hugged to her chest like a board. She gave me a small smile that said I had done the right thing by surviving the drive with my son in my passenger seat. "Mr. Parker," she said to Evan, extending a hand, "Lisa Patel, I represent your mother." He took her hand with reluctance, the way men take medicine. Behind him, the doors opened, and Ashley stepped out of a different elevator, face bright, lawyer in a navy suit at her elbow. She had dressed for a photo, a neat blouse, delicate gold necklace, like a thin chain of safety. If I hadn't known her heart, I would have complimented her. "Finally," she said to Evan, as if he'd been the one keeping her from something. Then she saw Lisa, and the expression on her mouth changed shape. "You brought counsel," she said, and the word sounded like an accusation. "I brought truth," I said. Inside, the courtroom was one of those long ones where people come to dissolve their lives. A commissioner sat up on the dais with a stack of motions like loaves of stale bread. There were men in ill-fitting suits and women with clipboards and a row of people who looked like they'd slept in their cars. I took a seat at the table next to Lisa. My hands found the metal biscuit tin like a talisman. When our case was called, it sounded less like my name and more like an incident report. In RE Petition for Limited Guardianship of Person and Estate, Respondent Margaret Klein, petitioners Evan and Ashley Parker. Ashley's lawyer went first. He had the voice of a man who reads menus out loud to impress waitresses. "Your Honor," he said, "this is a straightforward situation. The respondent is an elderly woman who, while beloved by her family, has exhibited confusion and susceptibility to financial scams. The petitioners have stepped in out of concern. We are simply asking for a limited guardianship to protect Ms. Klein's person and estate." Lisa didn't glance at me. She didn't have to. We had rehearsed it the way you rehearse getting a catheter into a moving target. She stood. "Your Honor, my client is 68. She lives independently. She pays her bills. She asked her son for help transferring photos and instead watched him change the recovery email on her bank account and enroll her in a password manager that he controls. She discovered Zelle transfers from her account to the petitioners. We will present those logs. We will also present a cognitive assessment, Montreal Cognitive Assessment, score 28 out of 30, performed by Dr. Annika Nguyen at Swedish Ballard 2 days ago. We will present a sworn declaration from her neighbor, a registered nurse, and we will present policy guidance from RCW 11-130, which requires that before imposing guardianship, the court consider less restrictive alternatives, including supported decision-making. This petition is a solution in search of a problem. The commissioner, gray hair, glasses balanced on the tip of his nose, looked over his readers at Ashley's lawyer. Did your clients change recovery information on Ms. Klein's accounts without her explicit consent? Ashley shifted. Evan's mouth did that hard line it does when he thinks a referee has made a bad call. Their lawyer lifted his hands. In the course of helping Ms. Klein manage her affairs, they may have optimized some settings. Optimized? Lisa said, gentle as a scalpel. She slid an exhibit packet onto the cart that gets rolled to the bench. These are BECU logs, courtesy of branch manager Bailey Jensen. They show the addition of an external recovery email tied to the petitioners. They show device changes originating from the petitioners' IP addresses. They show 2 Zelle transfers in the amounts of $580 and $980 to accounts labeled with the petitioner's initials. Memo lines include a winking emoji and the phrase household supplies. Also included is a transcription of a voicemail, filed via declaration, in which petitioner Ashley Parker can be heard instructing petitioner Evan Parker to tell Ms. Klein that it's fraud alert. That always works. Ashley's lawyer sputtered. This is being mischaracterized. These were reimbursements for legitimate expenses. My clients have been purchasing groceries, paying for technology upgrades, and— Do you have receipts? The commissioner asked mildly. The silence that followed felt like when you open the freezer and realize the power's been off all night. Ashley's eyes flicked to Evan. Evan looked at the table like the wood grain had a solution. Respectfully, Lisa continued, this is not how caring for an elder works. This is how control works. My client has already implemented less restrictive alternatives to guardianship. She has arranged for a supported decision-making agreement, appointing 2 trusted friends, Helen Sharp, RN, and Dr. Nguyen, to assist her in complex decisions. She has placed alerts and in-person verification requirements on her financial accounts. She has secured a P.O. box for sensitive mail. These are the steps of a competent adult protecting herself. This petition is an overreach, and frankly, Your Honor, a misuse of the guardianship process. The commissioner leaned back and steepled his fingers. For a second he looked tired, and I remembered that days like this mean he has to watch families make sharks of themselves. He looked at me. Ms. Klein, do you want your son and daughter-in-law to be your guardians? No, I said. My throat felt raw and clean. I want them to apologize, repay what they took, and stop pretending their worry gives them my life. There was a murmur behind us. I didn't turn to look. I kept my eyes on the man who could sign papers that would put my keys in other hands. He nodded. All right, he said, and his voice went a notch softer. Here is what will happen. The petition for limited guardianship is denied. I find that the respondent is capable of managing her affairs and has already put in place less restrictive alternatives as contemplated by RCW 11.130. I am further granting the respondent's motion for fees. Petitioners will reimburse respondent's reasonable attorney's fees in this matter. In addition, given the allegations and preliminary evidence of unauthorized account access, I am issuing a temporary order prohibiting the petitioners from accessing or attempting to access any of the respondent's financial accounts or digital services. Violations will result in contempt. Ms. Patel, you may coordinate with the clerk on the order's language. Ashley went white, then red, then something worse. Evan looked suddenly younger, like a boy who had broken a window, and was waiting for the sound of his father's foot on the stairs. Ashley hissed something at their lawyer. He raised his hands in a small gesture that said, I cannot conjure receipts. We stepped out into the hallway, and the air felt thinner, as if we were closer to sky. Lisa exhaled. That's the scaffolding, she said. Now the frame. What frame? I asked, and she smiled with exactly 2 teeth showing, the one that holds your revenge. The next 7 days were thin strips of movement, sliced by sleep. I filed a report with Adult Protective Services. The woman on the phone had a voice like flannel and asked good questions. I handed over the BECU logs, the Zelle screenshots, The voicemail transcription. "We'll open a case," she said. "We take exploitation seriously. It doesn't always look like a stranger." The detective from SPD's Elder Financial Abuse Unit called 2 days later. He asked if I'd be willing to provide bank statements and to authorize a subpoena of the petitioner's accounts. "Yes," I said, and my voice didn't shake. Helen sat at my table with me, coffee cups lined like sentries, and signed the supported decision-making agreement Lisa had drafted. "We're old," she said, "but we're not stupid." "Speak for yourself," I said, and we both laughed until we had to put napkins under our eyes like student drivers. Marissa drove up from Portland on a Friday with a trunk full of casseroles and a Fury that hummed. She read the court order and exhaled like she'd been underwater. We went for a walk around the Ballard locks, watched a barge muscle its way through the channel like a bad mood. "You sure you don't want me to torch their lives?" she asked, hands in her pockets. "I want you to stand beside me," I said, "and if a match is needed, I'll tell you where to strike." She nodded. The salmon ladder burbled. A child pointed into the glass, seeking proof that struggle has a purpose. On the way home, we stopped at Town and Country for groceries. In the checkout line, I pulled out the Salal checkbook, old, blue, edges soft from years in a drawer, and wrote a check for the cart like a woman who remembers exactly how to press pen to paper when she's funding her own defense. The teenage cashier blinked at it like it was a vinyl record. "Cool," he said, running it through the machine gently, like it might be someone's grandmother. On Monday, Lisa filed a motion for sanctions, attaching an email Ashley had sent Bailey at Beckyou berating her for interfering with the family's private arrangements, which did not play well next to the bank's responsibility to protect account holders. Lisa also filed a civil demand letter to Evan and Ashley requesting repayment of all funds transferred without authorization, plus my fees, within 14 days, or we'd proceed with civil claims under Washington's Consumer Protection Act. She sued their lawyer, and to my surprise and private joy, Ashley's employer's legal department, the company name in a font that looked expensive. "You didn't," I said. "Notice," Lisa said, as if that were a flavor of tea. "It does wonders on corporate imaginations." What I did next felt small and enormous at once. I drove to the east side and parked 2 blocks from Evan and Ashley's townhouse. The wet February sky pressed low. I didn't bring flowers. I brought a small package, a white binder, neatly tabbed, the title printed in a big font, supported decision-making agreement and durable powers. Inside, I had included a copy of the order denying guardianship, the temporary restraining order, the motion for fees, and a single sheet of lined paper. On it I'd written, "I am not your project. If you want to be in my life, you will return what you took, and you will ask before you touch what is mine. If you want to argue, argue with the law. If you want to love me, call me when you're ready to do it with an open hand." I rang the bell and left the binder on their stoop. I was halfway back to my car when the door opened. Ashley's voice knifed the air. "This is harassment," she said, holding the binder like it was contagious. "You're going to regret this." I turned carefully. "No," I said. "I'm going to sleep." Evan appeared behind her, eyes complicated. He didn't speak. He looked like he wanted to. Then Ashley slammed the door and I heard her say, "We are not caving to her manipulations." Inside my car, I put my forehead on the steering wheel and let out a sound that started as a sob and ended as a laugh. Survival has a weird sense of humor. 2 weeks later, the APS investigator called. They'd interviewed Evan and Ashley. Their explanations had shifted with the light. The detective had pulled bank records. The Zelle funds had been promptly moved from their personal accounts to a brokerage Evan managed, a small nest of money moving in circles. The detective used the word pattern. He used the phrase referral to the prosecutor. I hung up and sat with that. Revenge is a word for theater. Accountability is a word for paper. The sanctions hearing was brief and unromantic. The commissioner tallied numbers the way nurses tally milliliters, attorney's fees, filing fees, service fees. He avoided moral language and stuck to the math of consequence. Petitioners are ordered to pay respondents' attorney's fees in the amount of $8,940 within 30 days, he said, and banged his gavel because theater sneaks into paper whenever it can. Ashley whispered furiously to their lawyer. Evan looked at me, and for a moment, I didn't see the man he'd become or the boy he was. I saw the baby whose lungs learned the shape of my voice. I looked away. 3 days after that, I got an email, not a text, from Evan. The subject line was, "Mom." The body said, "I'm sorry. I thought I was helping. Ashley says we were justified, but I don't know. I'll bring the check by on Friday." I read it, then forwarded it to Lisa. She replied with a thumbs up emoji, and beneath it, "Don't be alone when he comes." I wrote back, "I'm never alone." Friday afternoon, he came without Ashley. He handed me a cashier's check for the exact amount ordered by the court. He smelled like cedar and something tired. "She's furious," he said. "With you, with me, with the world." "Being caught does that," I said. We stood there, two people who shared a face shape and a history and an absence. "Evan," I said, and he looked at me as if bracing for a slap. "You may not come into my house if you're carrying a tool that makes me smaller. You may come in if you're empty-handed." He swallowed. "I don't know what that means." "It means leave your fixes on the porch," I said. "Bring your heart to the table." He laughed, a sound that broke in the middle. "I don't think I know how to do that." "Learn," I said. "Or don't. I'm okay either way." He put his hands in his pockets, looked at the metal biscuit tin on the shelf by the door, the one I'd stopped hiding. "What's in there?" he asked, half curious, half trying to restart the joke we couldn't afford. "Recipes," I said, "and proof." He nodded like a man who just learned a new word and wasn't sure how to spell it. He left. I locked the door. I put the cashier's check into the Salal deposit envelope and drove to Capitol Hill, to the friendly teller who remembered me. "Dusty one again?" he said, and I smiled. "Less dust," I said. "More light." I didn't see Ashley for months. I heard about her in the way you hear about people now. A LinkedIn update that disappeared, a whisper from a mutual acquaintance that HR had had a conversation, a rumor that she and Evan were taking space. I did not cheer. I made soup. I started walking Green Lake in the mornings with Helen. I took a class at the Nordic Museum about genealogy because I wanted to remember who I was before I was someone's mother and someone's mark.